Hello, my name is Leo, and welcome to a new day of the Elder Scrolls Arena. We are now on our way to Tenma Forest. Yes, so that's where we're going. Should arrive there on Friday. In the meantime, though, let's enjoy this countryside romp through the wilderness on our horse. Well, I talked to you about a TV show, a pretty hyped TV show that I saw last night on Japanese TV. It started off simple enough. It was like there's 20 people. They were sort of standing in this giant, like yellow rectangle outside. It sort of felt like a scene from like The Amazing Race, because they were sort of outside, and it sort of seemed like they were gonna run because they were all wearing like running stuff. Um, so what it was okay. So they were standing in this big yellow square, which is like the start square where they had to start from, right? Then in front of them, about 10 meters in front of them, were these three giant, like futuristic looking cages. And inside the cages were these three, or each cage had a huge dude in like a black suit and glasses. Basically they were agents from the Matrix, except they were Japanese. Um, and they had these cool glasses on that had like cameras built into them, which I'll tell you more about in a moment. So they were about 10 meters away, and between them, there was basically, it was kind of like queues going up to like a ride, like Space Mountain or whatever. Like had like three different lines going up. Anyway, about halfway between the contestants and the dudes in the cages was this console. Now, the dudes in the cages were called quote unquote hunters, or as the announcer guy would say, hunter. The announcer guy was one of the is if you've ever watched like a promotional video or trailer for a Japanese game, like in Japanese, there's that same guy who's got like this low sort of voice and just speaks really calmly. The Ryuga Gotoku movies usually have that kind of guy, and he was the announcer for the entire thing. So usually in like game shows they have like a couple of like guest stars, and they all comment about what's happening on the screen. But this one, it was just this guy just going, "Ooh, the hunter's coming. He's gonna get the guys. They must run." Um, and so I've just given away what the game is now. So it started off as a pretty simple game. I thought it was just like a mini game, like a Takeshi's Castle mini game, because one by one, each of the contestants had to walk up to the console while the others stayed in their little yellow circle, like yellow square. And there were two buttons. There was a green button and a red button on this big console. Then they were given a time. Like the first guy had 60 seconds, right? What he had to do was he had to press the green button and then press the red button after exactly 60 seconds had elapsed. The leeway was it had to be between 60 seconds flat and 60 seconds and 60 milliseconds or something like that. So there was this tiny like 1 second like leeway that they had. The first person, so you press the button, counted to 60, press the red button, all good. Next person, I think it was 10 seconds, counted, done. Then there was like 2 seconds, counted, done. Then there was like a minute, 3 minutes, and they had to. Anyway, they all got through that perfectly fine. And presumably, because all the guys in the yellow areas were scared crapless when the contestant was up pressing their buttons, I assumed that if he had stuffed up and done it at the wrong time, the cages would open, the hunters would come out, chase down, and get him in a running of the bulls style game. I assume that's what happened. But that never happened because they all got their timing right and it was fine. I was like, okay, well that was a fun little minigame. What minigame are they gonna do next? Usually they go to some other set and do a different game and explain the rules of the game. Oh no, we're not done yet. That was only the prelude of this 2 hour long game that you're about to play. So what happened then was a timer appeared and it started counting down from 60 seconds. Then all the contestants just ran out into the wilderness. Well, not the wilderness, but ran out into away from the hunters. And after 60 seconds, the cages opened. The hunters came out. Although they weren't running as I expected, they came out very calm and just walked around. And basically, you had to stay away from the hunters. And then a timer appeared at the bottom right of the screen, which started at 120 minutes and started counting down. So I guess for the next 2 hours, they had to sort of stay away from these hunters. At the same time, though, next to the counter was another counter that was counting up in money. Every 2 seconds, it was adding 200 yen to the pot, which is about $2. And it was just counting up and up and up, so it quickly got to $10 and $20, $50, $100. It just kept going. So at this point, I didn't know if they got caught by a hunter. Obviously they're out of the game, but do they get to keep the money that is accrued so far, or do they lose the money? I found out later that if they get caught, that's it, you've lost all your money. However, there is a telephone somewhere on the map that if you call in and say you want to give up, you can quit the game at that point and keep whatever money has accrued so far. That's kind of cool. So with the hunters, so they basically the hunters would just walk around. They had these, like I said before, they've got these sunglasses with little cameras on them, so that you can, as they're chasing someone, you can sort of see, like, you know, POV. POV? Yeah, POV. Yeah, through their point of vision. That said, if a hunter, they didn't run. Well, they didn't run all the time. I think they had certain rules set to them, so they had to stay, like, they had to remain calm. And I'll give the actors props, although they probably didn't show the times when they stuffed up, but all the time they were on camera, their faces were this clean, blank slate of nothing. Their faces were just, you know, really calm and just no emotion, which is what, you know, an agent from the Matrix is supposed to be. But although, to be fair, the agents in the Matrix, well, with the exception of Smith, because he went a bit crazy, they tended to smile and smirk and grunt and had angry faces, but these guys, pure just blankness. Anyway, so I guess they had some rules associated with them. They couldn't just run around everywhere, because they weren't like big, burly dudes. I mean, you couldn't really tell because they were wearing suits, but they were fairly slender looking. They were like, Slenderman, God, I watched Marble Hornets last night too. It's like, well, I watched a bit of Marble Hornets last night, which is the Slenderman videos, if you will. Check them out on YouTube. But so they couldn't just run around everywhere, otherwise that, you know, the contestants would be screwed. They had to walk, and they had earpieces on. I don't know if someone in the background was feeding them information about the whereabouts of these people. I don't know if that was going on or not, but they walked around, and then if they made visual contact with a contestant, then it was on. They would run, like, they would just bolt as fast as you can think of. And basically, if a hunter sees you, you're gone, you're done. Because not one contestant in this entire 2 hours ever survived being seen by a hunter. Like, they ran and they made a good effort. They ducked and weaved and they hid around stuff, but the hunters always got them in the end. So they were really good at catching people. So they'd run up to you, they'd sort of tap you on the shoulder, and then you'd be out, and then you'd have to go like a jail. There was a special jail set up somewhere on the map. Now the map leads me neatly onto the map. It was sort of like a theme park. It was kind of like one of the, you know, those kind of theme parks, they don't really have them in Australia so much. In America they kind of do. They're like, it's like a recreation of like an old, ye olde town from a particular time period in history. complete with actors that would dress up in like costumes, and they would have a role that they would play within the town, like shopkeeper or policeman or whatever. It was like that, except it was in Meiji era Japan. Now, those of you who don't know Meiji era Japan, it was just after the Tokugawa period of Japan, like the samurai period of Japan, where Japan was opening their borders between the 1900s and 1945, although it was a lot closer to 1900s, where Japan was starting to open its borders to the West. Japanese were going West crazy by starting to build houses, build buildings in Western style, wear Western clothes, buy neat little Western gear like glasses and bicycles and did they have bicycles? I don't know if they had bicycles. But this town was basically like that. So you had all these actors who were, some of them were dressed up in like traditional Japanese outfits, others were dressed up in like the Western outfits. You had your policemen, you had your shopkeepers. The buildings themselves were a Western-ish style. They were like, it was sort of like they were like wooden shacks, really. I guess this wasn't like a big city, like say in Way of the Samurai 4, who those of you who played Way of the Samurai 4, that's also set in Meiji era Japan. It was more like a very small station out in the middle of nowhere sort of place. And there were, I think the area was divided into 4 or 5 different sections. And there was also, just like in Way of the Samurai 4, there was a sick-ass train line that ran through the middle of the map, with a one-carriage train being pulled by horse, just like in Way of the Samurai 4. What else was there? So the hunters, they were doing their thing. So yeah, you just had to stay away from the hunters, because if the hunters saw you, you were screwed. Now, the game, from that, I mean, the concept of that game is good enough. Although I was starting to wonder, how is this going to keep my attention for 2 hours? And I didn't realize it at first. I thought they were sort of skipping time from time to time, because 2 hours is a long bloody time for one friggin', one TV program. But I quickly realized that it actually did go for 2 hours, because I watched the entire thing, because they made it interesting. Like, the concept is fun for maybe, I don't know, 10-15 minutes, and for the first 10-15 minutes it was basically just dudes running around trying to stay away from the hunters, and the hunters, trying to stay away, trying to catch them. But then a storyline emerged, similar to a storyline of like the first couple of Way of the Samurai games, where it started off, there was this woman, she was hiding from a hunter, and then, actually, before that, some other guy saw this one samurai who was, like, walking through the streets, and this woman was, like, hiding behind a building, and saw the samurai with no shirt on, taking a shower or whatever, and she was like, oh, wow, he's so ripped, oh, gushing everywhere. Now, for those of you who don't know, in the Meiji period, well, from the start of the Meiji period of Japan, samurais were no longer a thing. So I think you were allowed to like keep your title of samurai, but you didn't really, there were no real privileges or like perks to being a samurai anymore. You've sort of were stripped of all your rights and stuff. Also, samurais were not allowed to wear the samurai top knot, which is that little hairstyle that they had on the top of their head. Also, it was illegal to carry a sword. Now, this samurai didn't have a top knot, but he did have a sword. He was a Ronin warrior. Ronin warriors! Anyway, so he had a sword, so he was basically defying the law at this particular time. Anyway, so this story, and then the scene sort of changed from being footage of the show. Actually, that's one thing I didn't mention before, is that each contestant and hunter had their own little cameramen following them around. So when the hunters were searching for them, right, the contestant might have been hiding behind a building, but the cameraman was like standing out in the open. And, obviously, I guess the hunters, as like in character, had to pretend like they had not seen that. Otherwise, it would have been really unfair, and I would have been really pissed if I was a contestant and I got found by a hunter because the freaking cameraman was standing out in the middle of nowhere pointing a camera at me. Jeez. Also, I think there was one time where the guy was like running away, and as he was running, like the cameraman was like in his way, and he got caught. I was like, oh, that's bullshit. I'd be punching that freaking cameraman out because there's a lot of money riding on this. Although I don't actually know if they got the money. I think it might have been for charity because the contestants were, well, my Japanese wife was telling me that they were all comedians or like famous actors or whatever. So maybe it might have been for charity, so not really for them. But you know, they still really wanted to win. Where were we? We were talking about something. Ronin Warriors. Oh yeah, the story. Right. So it stopped from being footage of the actual like the contest to be like a proper production like film where the samurai guy's washing himself. This little kid comes out and he's like, "Oh wow, you're a samurai. Oh, I love samurai." Like he idolized him and starts following him around. Then there is a scene where there's this poor old woman who's carrying her vegetables and and there's this foreign diplomat, this douchebag guy. I think he was from England, an England like general or something, riding in the back of a horse and buggy, right down the street. Next to him was a Japanese diplomat, who was I guess was like his translator or something like that. You could tell just by looking at them that they were the antagonists of the story. Not that the whole idea was to be racist against the Westerners, but you know, screw Westerners basically. Which is how I play Way of the Samurai 4. So anyway, so this woman's like carrying her vegetables or whatever, nearly gets run the freak over by this horse and buggy. All her like fruit and veg gets strewn over the road and ruined. And what happens? The English general guy sort of spills his drink on his leg, on his pants, and stains his pants, and gets all angry at her. Like, dude, you lost all the food. What a dick. So he wants to like get out of the buggy and beat the living crap out of her. But the Japanese diplomat next to him goes, no, you probably shouldn't do that. Might spark an international incident. Don't worry, bro. I got this. Gets out and starts beating the crap out of her on the side of the street. Just kicking her constantly. Enter Samurai guy comes in to rescue her. And both the foreign general and the Japanese diplomat are sort of like, oh, you're a samurai, you're not supposed to wear swords, you're a bad guy. And he's like, I don't give a shit about your rules, you mother tuckers. You ain't gonna silence me, fool. He didn't really talk like that, but basically the foreign diplomat, the Japanese diplomat said, well, you know, if you want to, save her, well, you better pay for his dry cleaning bill, okay, well, how much is his dry cleaning bill? 35 sen. Now, I didn't know this until I watched this show. Sen was a currency denomination in that period of Japan. Everyone should know what a yen is. It's the standard currency, which is more or less a cent in English conversion. A sen is 1/100th of a cent of a yen. So 100 sen is 1 yen. So 1 sen is basically 0.01 cent. So 10 sen is like 0.1 of a cent. Which doesn't seem like a lot of money, but at the time it was a lot of money. Samurai guy, obviously being a wandering vagabond, friggin' country bumpkin Ronin, didn't have any money and also had a completely empty stomach that growled all the time. So he couldn't pay the dry cleaning bill. This is where it got interesting. This is where a mission started, which is where all the contestants got an email, or maybe it was an SMS, I don't know, on their smartphones that were in a little shoulder pouch. That I don't think they realized that there was a smartphone in their shoulder pouch, because some of them like got completely scared shitless when it suddenly went off. Maybe because they were scared that the hunter was going to hear them. So the mission was this. You gotta give the samurai money to pay for the dry cleaning, which is... No, sorry, it wasn't 10 cent. I keep screwing that up. It was 35 cent that the samurai needed to pay for the dry cleaning. It wasn't dry cleaning, but you know what I mean. For the damages. So the mission was the contestants had to give the samurai 35 sen to pay for the damages, or else. Now the or else was... Wait, what was the or else? Oh, one of the areas on the map would be closed off, and they would not be able to access it anymore. Meaning that the area that they were able to hide from the hunters would be, like, diminished by one-fifth. Now, here's the rub. At that same time that they got that mission, a little box that was attached to their side opened up, and inside was 10 cent. Each contestant had 10 cent each, but the mission, they had to give 35 cent to the samurai. So at least they would need at least 4 contestants to work together in order to get this this mission completed. That being said, they actually did. I wouldn't have done it. I can tell you that right now. I would have lamed it out, but they were actually quite cooperative, and they sort of joined together and pooled their money and paid the samurai. The foreign guy was a bit pissed off they didn't get to kick the samurai's ass, but the Japanese diplomat was happy that he got 35 cent, which I guess is a lot of money. I don't know, whatever. And that was mission completed, and the area didn't get closed off. Whew, that's that crisis averted. And then there were a total of 5 missions, but it was sort of dynamic because one of the last missions involved that area that was about to be closed off. So if that area had been closed off already, I don't think that mission would have happened. So it was kind of like there could have been multiple endings, kind of like Way of the Samurai, which is kind of cool. There were 5 missions that went off. I don't think I'll be able to remember all of them, but I'll go through as many as I can. After that, so the contestants went back to sort of running away from hunters. A few more died. I think they were down to like 17 contestants left now at this point. Maybe less than that. Maybe, wait, 17? No. Sorry, less than that. So 7 were dead. So there was about 13, 12 left. Now, interesting note that mentioned before there was a jail where all the guys had to go to when they were captured. After they got captured and they were put in jail, any money that they had, they'd put into this bucket or this machine. What happened is if they together they'd raised enough money, then the gates would be opened and they'd all be able to escape and go back into the game again, which was kind of interesting. That happened once in the course of the game. Although there was extra sort of rules, stipulations there. I think they got a black card, and they had to get a gold card, and there were gold cards sort of littered across the area that they had to grab in order to stay in the game before the time ran out. I didn't mention this before, but the missions, they were timed. So there was like a 3-minute or 5-minute time limit that they had to do the mission in, otherwise, they would fail, and then the area would be closed off. Now, there were there were a few random occurrences that happened throughout the thing. One was this fairly good-looking, cute young girl was walking around, and these 3 actors, these 3 dudes, who were like one of the characters, came up to her, and they surrounded her and started harassing her and saying, "Hey, you wanna come over to my place and have a little snooky?" And she's in typical Japanese girl fashion, was all like, "No, I'm sorry, please, no, I can't." But then the samurai dude came out of nowhere and just, said, "Leave her alone," and just beat the crap out of them. And she started swooning. She's like, "Oh wow, Kakui, so cool." If I was her, right, I would have been following him at that point, because if a hunter came along, the samurai would probably kill him for you. I mean, does that not seem logical to you? I don't know, but whatever. 2 other things that happened were, one was actually mission related. The first one, which wasn't mission related, was there was a couple of like stands of like peddlers like peddling their inventions or whatever. And the first one was this guy who wanted one of the female contestants to invest 10 sen into his business because he was going to create shaved ice. If you don't know what shaved ice is, basically it's a big block of cube of ice that's been shaved down to little shavings like a slushy, with like some food flavoring, food coloring sprinkled on top, and you eat the ice shavings. Basically, it's a slushy, or Slurpee if you want to be 7-Eleven about it. And she invested the 10 yen, and then later on down the track, as would be expected, friggin' the shaved ice friggin' sold like hotcakes, and she ended up getting 30 sen back, so she tripled her money. Another instance was a male contestant was talked into donating 5 sen to a business because this guy had created a battery that was going to sell like hotcakes, and it did sell like hotcakes, and he ended up getting 25 sen back. So he increased his money by friggin' 5 times, which is pretty good. It went from 5 to 25. Now, missions. Back to missions. So what was the next mission that happened? There was this sort of backstory with the kid where they showed his father getting killed by a shadowy man with a gun. Like his father got shot, and the shadowy man had a zigzag sort of scar on his arm. Lo and behold, it turns out later in the story that Japanese diplomat that was being a douchebag and beating up the old woman had a zigzag pattern on his arm. So obviously he was the bad guy who had killed the poor kid's dad. And obviously that was going to play into the storyline. What else happened? God. Let's get back onto the missions. Okay, so there was a mission where, well, it didn't take long for the samurai to like sort of make enemies with the English general and the foreign diplomat, and they basically posted warrants for his arrest, and there were like imperial soldiers looking out for him, and he was trying to get away from them, and he was trying to escape on the train. Normally the train fare is 5 sen, which he had, but the train man was a dick, knew that the samurai was trying to get away from him, took advantage of the situation and said, no, you got to pay me 35 sen to get out. So, next mission start, all the contestants got emailed, and the samurai had to get, they had to give the samurai 35 sen. Now, not only did they have to do that, but they had to ride the train, and at the end of the train line, there was a giant lever that they had prepared, and they needed to pull that lever. If they didn't pull the lever, right, this is where it got scary, there were... Actually, I've jumped ahead, but whatever. Actually, no, we'll come back to that mission, because the missions get like the consequences of failing the mission like increase exponentially. So I'll talk about this other mission, which was the samurai guy is walking through the streets and sees like a vending, all these people like trying out this new invention called the vending machine, which is obviously very popular in Japan now. So you put 10 sen in the machine and you get like a fortune. Like you get your fortune read and blah blah blah, and the samurai guy commented on how, oh wow, times are changing, times they are changing. So anyway, next mission started, which was there were 3 of these vending machines littered throughout the map. Also, throughout the map were 3 brand new hunter cages with 3 new hunters in them, right? And in 7 minutes or whatever, those hunter cages were going to open, and the hunters were going to come out and join the existing 3 hunters that there were. So totaling a maximum of 6 hunters. So the mission was that the contestants had to go to the vending machine, spend their 10 sen, and inside the locker, the vending machine, would be a padlock that they could put onto the cage to prevent that hunter from coming out. So they managed to locate two of the vending machines and pay their money, get the padlocks. Actually, they found all three vending machines and got three padlocks, but only two of them were able to actually lock the cage. So one cage was still unlocked when the time ran out, and then a new hunter came out, and now there's four hunters running around chasing them. So the stakes went up, they got increased. So now I can go back to the mission that I was talking about before. So the guy had to catch the train, right? And they had to flip the lever. If they didn't flip the lever, right, in that area that was going to get closed off, and this is why I was talking about the multiple endings or the fact that the missions were dynamic, there was a huge chest, like a big hunter cage, filled with not one, not two, not even three, but 10 hunters all together. And if they didn't flip that lever in time, then that cage would have opened and there would have been 14 hunters running around and they would have been screwed. I can tell you that right now. Luckily though, they were able to pull their money again with the other contestants, pay the samurai, who was very grateful and thankful for them for helping him out. Actually, yeah, I think that was the girl that, well, there were two women who got to him and were going to pay him, and he was like, why? And then the cute little girl that he'd rescued earlier came in, and she was like, oh, I remember you, and she's like, oh, I got money. Anyway, they managed to flip the lever and they averted another crisis. Then things got more and more like heated. I don't quite remember all the missions though, but one of the bigger missions was, so the English general and the Japanese diplomat were getting really pissed off at the samurai because he was really showing them up, and they had warrants for his arrest, which I already mentioned. Then they decided that they were going to send like a huge contingent, a whole battalion of imperial soldiers into the town to find the samurai and get him once and for all. And they were going to arrive in 10 minutes. So again, new mission start. There was a gate, which was actually the gateway between the main area and that area that was going to get closed off again. This is where the soldiers were going to come from, right? So in order to, the first mission that I mentioned that was going to close off that area, the same gate was there. So this is the same gate. So now the contestants had to, on purpose, close off that gate. Otherwise, the Imperial soldiers would have come in, and bad stuff would have happened. And again, in that area was those 10 hunters that would have come out, and just murdered them all, pretty much. So what happened? So they had to get to the gate and press a button or a lever or whatever and close the gate. Now it was easier said than done because they made it to the gate. And they're like, sweet, we made it to the gate in time. Pulled the lever, nothing happened. What? What's going on? They realized that there was no power to the gate, and there was a little convenient little square-sized hole for a power supply to go in. The guy that was there was that same guy that invested in the battery thing, and that's when he realized, oh snap, we need to buy one of those batteries. So we went back to the guy who was selling the batteries, and they were 5 cents a pop. So you wanted to pay him the 5 cents to get a battery. Oh, but the shopkeeper friggin' turned heel on him and went, no. These things are selling really well now. I'm not selling them for 5 cents a pop anymore. I'm selling them for, you guessed it, 35 cents a pop. So they then had to scrounge around and get 35 cents to pay the dude to get the battery, to put the battery in the gate, to flip the switch, and avert a crisis. Which they did. Now, at this point, the contestants that were in the jail, there were about 10 of them, I think. That's when they earned enough money to come back in and try to collect those golden tickets. Some of them got in. I think by the end of all this, there was only about 6 or so, or 7 people left, because the hunters were getting really, really good at catching them at this point. And there was only about half an hour to 20 minutes left in the match. So they really just had to hold out for as long as possible. If I was them at this point, now I didn't I mentioned at the beginning that as time was progressing, the money was going up. At this point in the game, it was up to like 1,000,000 yen, which is like $10,000. I think the maximum that you could earn was about $14,000 or $15,000, which I know doesn't seem like a lot of money, but it's a decent amount of money. And it was actually a fun kind of game. I wouldn't mind playing it myself. It sort of seemed cool. But anyway, the time sort of like drew to a close, and one by one they started getting discovered until there's only like one left, and there's like 1 minute left to go, and he was being really stupid. Like at this point, I would be hiding in like a bush or something, or like behind a building, but no, he was standing out in like the middle of the street. And like I said before, if you get seen by a hunter, I mean, he might not have known this, because I mean, he never got seen and he didn't know what the other contestants were doing, but if you get seen by a hunter, there's no way you can outrun them, because they're just too fast. So your best chance is to not be seen by them. But he actually did manage to survive until the end. And I don't quite... Well, at the end, he was like holding the cash, so I guess he won. But I mean, that was just a really interesting sort of game. It'd be fun if they had that sort of game, in the West from time to time. It's kind of like Amazing Race, only cooler, but with not quite as much money. But it would have taken a lot of effort to sort of set up, because, they had like this whole town full of actors that were doing their roles. They had this, this actual proper film production that they had created for this story that was going on. I can't remember what happened at the end. I think the samurai like decided that he was going to take care of the kid and like adopt him or whatever, and then the Japanese diplomat, he didn't die, but he got punished in some sort of way, and the British guy got shown up and basically left the country. Something like that, I don't know, but whatever. But that was just an interesting little show that I watched yesterday, but I've ranted on. It's probably the longest rant that I've done for a fast travel ever, but that's about it for me today. Tomorrow we'll be fast traveling our way to 10 Mile Forest some more, but for now, my name is Leo, and I will see you next time.